Hey folks, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can connect CrewAI with open source models. So let's say models like Llama 3 and build agents that are completely local, cost you nothing literally except for the cost that you would pay to run these models, and work completely securely locally unless you decide to exchange data outside your ecosystem using your agents. So I'm not going to be talking about every single thing about CrewAI because that's something I've done in the intro tutorial, and you can go ahead and check that out if you're new to this topic. But if you are not, then you will be able to catch up pretty quickly because we've already done this in the past, or if you've watched any other video, you'll be able to find some familiarity with respect to what I'm doing. So I have some code written here and I tried running this. You can see it's working with Llama 3. I need to just set all of this up as well. But either ways, I'm going to walk you through bit by bit. So I'm going to be creating a copy of this newsletter writer. Effectively, what this does is that it kind of goes to the internet, looks up for relative AI topic or the topics that we feed to the model. So I think the topic is somewhere here. So you can see AI in healthcare, and then it does research and writes a blog post like this, I believe. Yeah, you can see this is the blog post that was generated. Again, this is a small blog post, but what it does, it kind of looks up the internet and does all of this research for us. And I want it to use Llama 3 moving forward, right? And I've not done a tutorial with respect to how you can set up an open source model locally. So this is like a great time to do that as well. Let me just kind of walk you through all of this. And before you even do this, you need to install Ollama for this. So go ahead to ollama.com and then download the model with respect to whatever configuration you have. So macOS, Linux or Windows. And then go inside of the models and you'll be able to find Llama 3 on the top. So I think Phi 3 was released today. And we're also going to be making a video on that later in some time. Either ways, go to Llama 3 and then go ahead and copy this command. Once Ollama is installed, go ahead and paste this command here. And if you've done the setup correctly, you should be able to start the download in here. So for me, I've already downloaded it, so it's not going to download again. And if I just say hi, you can see the Llama 3 model is running completely locally. So for me, it's set up. If it's not set up for you, it will take some time. So it's around 4.7 GB, the 8 billion parameter model. The 70 billion parameter model is 40 GB, and I would recommend starting with 8 because I think for our use case, this should be more than enough unless you're looking at some production ready use case. And then next, what we're going to be using is CrewAI. CrewAI is a framework to build AI agents. It's extremely simple. And it's been some time since I explored this. So let me just quickly kind of go through some of these concepts here. So there are agents, tasks, tools, processes, crews, and memory. Let me see if I can find some illustration for you to understand. So found this very simple diagram with respect to what, just a note with respect to what and how agents work. So there are agents, right? There is agent 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's start from the bottom, in fact, right? So there are tools. Like let's say you are a marketing manager. Now, as a marketing manager or a code writer, you will use certain tools. So if you're a developer, you will basically use tools like Visual Studio Code and so on and so forth. If you are a marketing manager, you will use tools that allow you to send, say, email newsletters, right? And each of these tools will be associated with the task. Why do you use certain tools, Visual Studio, to write code? So that's your task. Now, who writes codes? A person who is supposed to write code, which is the role, which is, say, the developer, or in newsletter scenario, a marketing manager. So that's where this is how the hierarchy kind of looks like. There is a tool that you associate with the task, and there is a task that you associate with the agent. And CrewAI kind of gives us a framework in order to use all of these in a sequential manner. So you can see there's the agents, there's the tasks, there's the tools, and then there is the processes with respect to how you communicate with other agents. There is the crews, which is like an entire marketing team or an entire developer team and so on. And then there's the memory with respect to, say, in real world scenario, you can think of this as some documentation that marketing team might refer to when they are doing something or working on some project. There are some examples with respect to what CrewAI can do. So there is the landing page generator, Instagram post, prepare for meetings and so on. So let's open one of these examples. And you can see there's, I think the code should be written here, and here it is, right? So you have to create agents. You have to create what tasks those agents do. And then you also have to create tools in scenarios where they are necessary. I don't see the section for tools here because maybe the agents don't need the tools or tasks don't need the tools. But you would, in a typical world, I think we've created some tools in order for our agents to use those tools, right? What we are building today is a newsletter writer. here, which effectively what it does, it kind of looks at Google or any other open source website, and based on what it finds on Google, it writes a newsletter for the topic that we put in, right? So our topic here is AI in healthcare, and it kind of looks that up and and summarizes what it finds on the internet. You can see it's already running here. So I kind of started a chain before I, started recording the video. I think after I started recording the video, it kind of takes some time, right? So let's kind of go through each of these really quickly so that you understand. Now, in order to use CrewAI, and again, I'm not going to go through the entire setup because I've already done that in depth later. But in short, what you need to do, create a virtual environment. The reason why we create a virtual environment is because we don't want to install whatever we install across our PC. We just want it to limit for our project, right? So the first thing you need to download, if you've not done this, I'm still walking you through basics. Download Python here, download Visual Studio Code here. Both of these and again, you can look these up on Google. They are very popular, so you'll be able to find this. Download for whatever OS you have, and once you install Visual Studio Code and restart your computer after you install Python, you will be able to see something like this, right? This is the Visual Studio Code window. Obviously, you won't see all the code, rather you will see something like an empty window like this. So maybe something like this, right? And then you need to start a new folder, and all of that setup is discussed in the main tutorial. So go ahead and look that up. So once you do that, once you kind of reach that point, now we can start writing the code. So before we write the code, you need to create a virtual environment, because think of Python as a smartphone, right? It comes with a limited set of apps. It's not going to give you all the apps that you need. Rather, you will install whichever apps you need later when you start using the phone. Similarly, Python comes with the predefined libraries like OS, right? So Python knows that you're communicating inside of your project folder or your computer. So it gives you OS, but it will not give you things like CrewAI, which are third-party tools, which you need to install. And you do this by doing pip install the name of the library. Again, all of this is discussed in the other video, so I'm not going to dive in depth with respect to how you do each of these, because this will take a lot of time. And for them, this might become a little bit repetitive. So go ahead and watch that tutorial. It's going to guide you through everything you need to know in CrewAI, and it's going to be very fun, right? So I definitely recommend, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go watch that video, come back here, and it'll make a lot more sense. Anyways, let's change the model name to Llama 3 here. So assuming that you decided to watch the video if you don't know the context, and you got the context what you needed, or maybe you're someone who already understands what I'm talking about, or maybe you're someone who watched the previous video and then came to this video, right? Either way, so we do basic things like import the agents, task, crew, and process. I already explained what each of these means, so I hope all of this is now clear. And then we import CrewAI tools. This is basically a list of things or tools that CrewAI offers predefined. So let's say I want to search the web. Typically in Python, what you would do is that you would write some code for it to, go to that browser, for it to kind of look up specific thing in that browser and so on. So it's kind of a long process. But what CrewAI has done, because it already knows that we will use certain tools in order to build agents, it created a bunch of these tools. So you can see these are the list of tools that it has. Again, how I got here is by I hold the control key and I pressed here, which takes me to this module that we installed. Again, this is the pip install that we ran in the video itself, the main video, which helped us install this. It has all of these tools, right, in order for us to use it. So one of the tools that we are using is Serper Dev tool. Serper is basically an API that allows us to kind of look up web in real time and give us search results. So if you click on Serper Dev tools, you will also be able to find everything that it's doing, right? So what it's doing is that it's taking the name, the description, what we want to search, and then it's going to this URL to look things up for us. And then what it also wants is the API key, because it's not free, it's not allowing everyone to access it, but there are some free queries that you can use every month. And for our use case, I think that's more than enough, right? Once you feed the query, it looks up the internet and then gives us the results. So you can see this is what the code is doing. Let's close both of this. Again, in order to look up what something is doing, you can hold the command in Mac and click here. And then if, let's say I want to see what this is doing, you hold the command again and you click here, it goes to that code and it will show you what exactly that code is doing. It's kind of a way to save time. If someone hadn't written this code for you, then you would have to do it yourself. But because someone did it, I can just say that use the code that this guy has written for me and then run based on that, right? Okay, so once you import the tools, because we need to look up the newsletter content online, we will use the Serper Dev tool, and then we use the OS And then from LangChain, we also need certain tools, but I don't think we will be using this because you can see this is grayed out, which means we've not used it in the project. So I'm going to be removing this. And then LangChain OpenAI, which is in scenarios where we want to use OpenAI models or any LLM. So apparently how this is configured is that this by default calls it chat OpenAI, but you can see we are using Llama 3 as the model in order to chat. So anyways, go ahead and import this. Then we also import Ollama. Am I using Ollama though? I don't think I'm using Ollama. So I'm going to be hashing this out. I remember like when I was trying this last time, there was some issue. And because there was some issue, I ended up using the chat OpenAI rather than Ollama. So I looked it up on web when I was doing the search. And I think what I'm doing is working because you can see I am able to write blogs with this. So either ways, let's go to our newsletter Llama 3 model. And now if your Llama 3 is downloaded, you should be also able to see chat window like this. In order to stop it, just say bye and it'll stop it. But assuming all of this went well, your Llama 3 is running, you should be able to see something like this. And the fact that everything is set up, let's start building the model itself. So first we import the base URL. If you go to the Ollama documentation, you will be able to find that it not only allows you to chat in terminal, but it actually runs on this local host 113434. What this basically means is that it's constantly running this model in the background on some address inside your computer. This is that address. You copy this address and you add it here. Just for all Ollama models, this is exactly the address we'll use. What we'll need to change though is this. I was using, I think, OpenHermes before this, but now Llama 3 is working because Llama 3 is released and this tutorial kind of talks about Llama 3, just use this. And as a important or mandatory parameter, we also need to pass the OpenAI API key. So ensure that you put some dummy variables here. This was my previous API key, but I deleted it, so don't even try. Then we do Serpent API key, which is where you will do the search-based results. So if you go to the Serpent website, serpent.dev, just sign up in here and you can see you get like 2,500 free queries without any credit card requirement. So just sign up, get the open API key and then paste it here, which you can then use. Then we need to set up the LLM that we want to use. In our scenario, we're using LLM, which is Llama 3. So because what we did is when we went to Ollama, we just copied this command and we added it in terminal. Whatever you call that model is what we will be using here, right? So if this was Llama 2, we will call it Llama 2 and so on, right? So let's just name this, let's just use this model. You can also refer this variable, but for now, I'm just going to, use this one. And again, the reason why I added OS environment here is because I remember there were some issues initially when I was trying to set up the open source models. And I don't know if that's fixed now, but for now, this setup seems to be working. So I'm just going to be walking you through this. Then you use the base URL, which is this, and you can see the address is same as this. You can directly import both of these here, but let's just keep this as is. I don't want to break the flow. Then you get the tool. If I go to the doc that I showed some time back, you can see we need tools for doing certain tasks. Now, if someone is doing new data research, they will need to look up the web. And because they need to look up the web, we need this tool, which is the Serpent Dev tool that will allow us to get search results. So we get that tool from Serpent Dev tool, and then we create a researcher, the guy who looks up the content on the web. So you can see he's the senior researcher. And by the way, so he's an agent, right? We're not creating a task, we're creating an agent first. And we're naming this agent researcher. So create a researcher agent whose role is senior researcher. His goal is to uncover groundbreaking technologies and topic. And you can see this topic is a variable, which means whatever we pass in the topic here will be used here. So for example, this will be groundbreaking technologies in AI and healthcare, right? Or verbose, or whatever topic that you put in. Verbose basically means that it's going to be more communicative with respect to what it's doing. So if I go to the example here, you can see it's saying exactly what it's doing, right? So I have gathered in info and so on and so forth. That allows us to kind of keep a track of any errors that happen. So you can see there will be errors, and you kind of need to deal with those errors. So ensure that you keep verbose as true and then memory to be true, because I want this agent to also remember some bit of what it said previously in order to give logical answer next. So memory to be true, and then you put the backstory here, which is driven by curiosity or at the forefront and so on and so forth. And then there are the tools, the search tool. Then there are the tools, and this is important part. we need to assign a tool to this guy, and that tool is the search tool, right? So you can see I'm kind of adding the tools as search tool, and which model do we want to use is the LLM that we're using here. Now, this kind of brings me to my next point, is that you can also set up multiple LLMs. So maybe you can say LLM2 and then assign a different LLM to this guy and the different LLM to this guy. So maybe you want to use certain models for doing research and communication, but you want to use a better model for writing code, or maybe better model for writing the actual blog or newsletter. Then you can use a different model here and assign it to, say, a writer, right? And then allow delegation to be true or false is basically, do you want this agent to give tasks to some other agent? In my scenario, yes, because this guy will look up the news and then this guy needs to give it to the writer. Next, we set up the writer, and then the role is writer, narrate the compelling stories about AI and healthcare, verbose true, memory true, and then you give some backstory for good answers. And then you assign the tool to this guy as well. I don't know why I assigned this, because this guy may not need it. But in any case, let's just assign it to him. And then also give LLM and then allow delegation to be false. I don't want him to delegate to this guy. So now we have agents, we have the tools. Let's create the tasks for these agents, right? So the research task is the first task. And this basically says that identify the next big trend in the topic. Focus on identifying pros and cons. Your final report should clearly articulate the key points, its marketing opportunities and potential risks. The expected output is to be 3-paragraph long report on the latest AI trends. Or you can also say on the topic, right? So this kind of will take into account the variable. And then there is the second task. Also, by the way, you need to assign this to the agent. So the agent is the researcher agent that we created here. Now the second task we're creating for writer: compose an insightful article on the topic, focus on the latest trends and so on, and then expected output to be a 4-paragraph output. You can assign the tool to this guy, and then the agent is going to be the writer agent. Async execution is, so sync and async, right? So sync happens only after, say, this guy researches something, then you give it to this guy, right? So we want it to be in sync. We don't want this guy to write before this guy gives something. So we keep async false. In scenarios where these are independent activities, you can keep async as true. Then the output file to be called this. I'm going to change the name to Llama 3 blog post to kind of keep it different from what we have here. And then finally, now that we have tasks, tools, and agents, we create a crew. The agents are researchers and writers. Tasks are research tasks and write tasks. And process needs to be sequential, meaning one after the other. So now we have everything set up. The Llama 3 setup is done. And let's just run it. The topic is AI and healthcare. I'm going to call this decentralized AI. So again, this idea came from Krishna, who suggested in the comments of one of the posts that he wants me to kind of focus more on decentralized AI. So appreciate that you gave suggestion, Krishna. I'm going to be definitely talking more about decentralized AI in the future. So anyways, now that all we need is set up, all you can do is click on the play button here on the top right, and this starts the execution of the crew. And you can see entering new crew executor chain, which means it's now kind of looking at agents, the writers, and so on. And then, starting everything that it needs to do. So first it figure out who runs first, who runs next. And then once they figure out, so you can see I thought I need to start by understanding the current state of decentralized AI. And then the action for this agent is to search the internet. So search query current trends in decentralized AI. Okay, it says apologize for the mistake. Let me try again. So it kind of ran into some problem. And then it says that it ran into error again. I see what's going on here. I'll make sure from my action input correctly. Let me try again in the correct format. Okay, it seems like it's trying to run. It's running into some issues. So it seems like it's trying to run, but it's running into some issues. And you can see for a couple of times it failed because of formatting issues. And this happens a lot with open source models. Even Llama 2, when I tried before this, OpenHermes was better than this. But it's fine. Let's just see how far it goes, because one of the other things it was able to do, right? So it was able to write a blog on this. So it means that this is working. It's just that sometimes it runs into formatting issues and it's not able to continue working. So I just pressed enter to see if that fixes it. So I'm assuming it's looking up the web, because there's nothing in the terminal right now. So I'll just wait for it to execute and then restart the video when the agents have done working.
A few moments later.
All right, so I think I was able to get it to work. And then you can see this time, what does decentralized AI is asked by writer. And then the writer is going ahead and delegating that task to the researcher. Researcher looks up a bunch of articles from the web, and then they are now kind of working on summarizing the pieces of code. And you can see in the yellow here, these are the responses by the model. The green ones are the, I think, actions. You can see ask question to a coworker. And then these are, I think, the results. So I tried using the same input. I must stop using the action input. I'll try something else. And then it's kind of, these agents are kind of talking to each other to kind of get to the final output. And at this point, you can just go grab something, grab a coffee, relax while it kind of does the research and writes block for you. Again, this is like a very basic example with respect to what you can do. You can actually create very strong agents that can write longer word keywords now that we have things like Llama 3. Note that I've ran into a bunch of different issues when trying to run this on Llama 3, and it kind of works in very, very rare scenarios. Sometimes following a specific format is not what open source models can do very, very well when it comes to the response generation. So you will have to put in guardrails with respect to, parsing the format in specific manner if the model is not able to do so. Luckily, I was able to get it to work this time, but I'm assuming that you will probably run into some of the issues when you're trying this out on your end as well. And you can see the final answer is now generated. Let's just wait for a few seconds, and you can see the file is complete. If I go to the Llama 3 blog post here, you can see it's written like a very small post. Again, we did not specify what word counts we need. So again, not too bad, but it was able to give us the summary of what we need. So this is how you would connect Llama 3 or open source models with CrewAI. So I hope you were able to run this well locally as well. If you have questions, let me know. Thank you so much, guys, and have a good one.